Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey guys, this is Chandler, and I'm really excited for our conversation today. To kick us off, I want to start with a simple question for you all. Have any of you listening ever had an injury or physical pain that you've tried to treat, but it just won't go away? Most recently, about 6 months ago, I woke up one morning with a great deal of pain in my right knee. Now, I'm an active person. I like to do yoga. I walk, I spin, love biking outside. But there was nothing in particular that would have caused this injury. I just woke up with pain in my right knee. It was shooting pain right below my kneecap. Anytime I bent my knee in a very specific position. Didn't matter if I had weight on it. Sometimes it would happen if I was lying in bed and just straightening my leg. And you'd think it was the kind of thing I would probably address sooner. It took me a few weeks to actually recognize that it was a real injury. I went to an orthopedic. I had x-rays done. He gave me some physical therapy to do, and I did it all, but nothing came from the x-ray. It looked like I was totally healthy. They couldn't find anything. And yet 3-4 months later, I still had this pain. I was using creams, and I would say I was already working with my acupuncturist at the time, Jacques, who is here with us today, and I'm so excited for you to meet him. And for some reason, we were working on other things I had sought his guidance for, but one morning I mentioned that my leg was really bothering me, that I had this knee ailment. I had talked to doctors, I had gotten the x-ray done, and he looked at me and he said, "You want me to fix your knee? I can help with that." And I skeptically was like, "Sure, I would love to have you help me with my knee." And he sat me down, and remember, the pain is in my right knee. And he looked at me and put, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 needles max in my left elbow and told me to stand up out of the chair. And I did. And for the first time in I don't know how many months, there was no pain. He said, "Is that better?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's better." I mean, I was up and down out of that chair 6 or 7 times fast, putting full weight on my feet. And it was in that moment that I decided I truly believed. I believed before, but that moment really made me believe in the work he was doing. And I just have been so grateful for that and so much more that we've worked through together ever since. But I share that story because I think it's an important place to start. And he's here today, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Jacques Depardieu. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about him. Jacques is nationally board certified in acupuncture and traditional Chinese pharmacology, and has been practicing for over 25 years. He has a master's in oriental medicine and has been a Qigong practitioner and teacher for over 30 years. He's a self-described advocate of the human spirit, having treated thousands of individuals for a wide array of conditions. He understands the role that spirit, creativity, and spontaneity play in creating health and recovery. We also both happen to have graduated from Colgate University, go Gate, though didn't figure that out until a few months into our sessions together. So that's been kind of a fun surprise as well. So Jacques, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being with us. I'm thrilled to introduce you to listeners and share more over time about the great work you do within East Asian medicine. For our time today, I'd love to start with the basics of acupuncture, since that's how we've worked together and is a key focus in your practice.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And thanks for sharing that fun story.
Can you take a moment to speak to the holistic approach to traditional East Asian medicine? What is it, and what are the various reasons why somebody would reach out to you for help?
Yeah. So basically, your story is a perfect example of what I've encountered over the last, 3 decades, really. Acupuncture was a modality that was generally used by people as a last resort. So it was one of those things where it was really fringy. People were like, oh, well, there's no hope, so why don't you try acupuncture, kind of thing. Tried everything else. And then over time, people started to realize, well, that's really crazy, but like it's really great for like knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, that kind of thing. So then probably about 15, 20 years ago, it became very supported for side effects of chemo and for fertility, which I treat fertility patients, which really when you treat patients for that or for something similar, you create an effect where patients get pregnant where they were told they either couldn't or they had failed IVFs, and word goes around quickly. And at this point now, I think a lot of the fertility clinics have acupuncturists in-house. I know at least 5 or 6 that do. And they probably started doing that maybe 10 or 15 years ago. We're at a point now where acupuncture, I believe when I started, there were 3 schools in the United States. And now I think there's like 50 or 60, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it's something which went from fringe to now is incorporated.
What is acupuncture? Like if I'm going in for a session, I think a lot of people probably hear or assume it's just a bunch of needles, really painful and scary. But if you really break it down, can you help listeners understand what's happening when you get acupuncture?
The way that I practice is to support the body to communicate within itself, within that particular individual. If you can assist the person to experience a state, it's kind of like if you meditate, if anybody meditates, it's very similar to someone who's meditated for, let's say, 6 months, an hour or 2 a day. You can start to experience that. Acupuncture is a shortcut to that, at least the way that I practice. And in that state, generally the person is more consciously aware of being in their body than in their mind. We're constantly directing our thoughts and feelings, whether we're aware of it or not, to being in a state of either thinking about the past or projecting into the future, our schedules, our agendas, what we have to do, right? And the acupuncture can help the person experience being in their body without those thoughts and feelings happening and directing them. And that sounds so simple and so obvious, but when you experience it, you can completely change the way your body reacts to food. You can change the way your body's experiencing pain. You can change the way your body is experiencing a headache, because the tension in your body leaves. And for lack of a better way of communicating it, the body has a memory, and just like our mind. And when that is disengaged, then the way we're experiencing tension, whether it's in our jaw, whether it's in our chest, whatever that way, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, kind of breaks the chain of memory. And that's what happened, Chandler, with you with those pins. That's quite an undertaking to describe the meridians and their relationships. But simply put, there is an energetic relationship between your left arm and your right knee. And if you know from experience where that relationship is, you can affect change in one part of the body by needling another. And kind of like if you want to turn the lights on in the family room, but you know that in your entrance you have like the big master switches. So you just go to the master switch. You don't have to walk all the way down to the family room to turn the lights on. You just do it on from the master switch. It's kind of like that. That's a simplification.
And I loved what you said about breaking the cycle of past memory so that you can just be in the present. And I think beyond the knee and the digestive issues and anxiety that I'm being treated for with you, I think it really helped me emotionally as well with some of those thoughts that I had been carrying in my physical self. And I just felt like there have been some very powerful moments where just dropping into my body and being present has disrupted that cycle of carrying those feelings, those emotions day to day without even realizing it. And I think that's really important, right? It broke it so I could feel different for a minute. And I knew that there was another way to feel. And that's what got me more curious and wanting to do more.
And basically, what's beautiful about this conversation is it's personal and it's unique. And that's what acupuncture is. Acupuncture is personal and unique, but so is any modality that assists us to become experientially self-realized in whatever way we want to interpret that. And I believe all healing occurs within us, and it can be activated by a thought or a feeling or a desire, but it happens within. And acupuncture is fascinating because it can facilitate that without us having to use our thoughts, our feelings, or our intentions.
I so believe in that. And I definitely think, based on my experience with you, that is definitely at the core of how you think about your work. I've, felt that deeply. I have to ask, given that answer, and you've said this to me before too, after some of our best sessions, you're like, I hear all the time patients ask me, are there drugs on these needles? I mean, how do needles do everything you're saying?
If you cut your leg, you don't have to tell your body to send white blood cells and platelets there. Okay. You don't wake up in the middle of the night to make sure that your heart's pumping and that your kidneys are functioning. And so what acupuncture does, it facilitates and supports what our body is naturally trying to do. And a good practitioner targets the systems that the physical body is working towards in order to enhance what the body naturally wants to do. And often in our lives, we think of our bodies mechanically, but not energetically. We are a living entity, not only our whole being, but what makes our whole being up, all of our cells or organs, and they need support and they need health just as much as what we consider ourselves is our mind. So the idea of holistic medicine, acupuncture is one of the modalities that's used in, traditional East Asian medicine. It's made its way into the mainstream, but the practitioner's questions should really be about what's going on in your life. What are you eating? How is your sleeping? What's your digestion like? Because basically, if you come in and you're like, hey, my knee's bothering me. Okay. So it's like, okay, so how's it going? You're like, oh, good. I have like 10 Red Bulls a day, and then like I drink 5 cups of coffee. I sleep 2 hours a night and I smoke like 10 cigarettes a day, whatever. Okay. So your body has to really manage all of that. That's a lot of your energy. So it's difficult for people who live that kind of lifestyle to heal. The reciprocal is true as well, which is like I eat well, I get adequate rest, but I have, a gastrointestinal disorder. I had my thyroid removed. I have asthma. So that person is going to have generally a little more difficulty in the healing process. And so often a good practitioner treats all of the underlying issues so that that person's healing can happen more quickly. All right. That's what it's all about. Like, so, the person's like, my digestion's better. I'm sleeping better. That person's going to already start healing. Right. And each person who goes and seeks out treatment needs to make a connection with that practitioner, and they should be able to have clinical results with the practitioner supporting their overall health and well-being mentally, physically, and emotionally. I would say that what's fascinating about acupuncture is it's experiential. It's just similar to, a sunset on the beach.
I'd be really interested to hear some of the ways that you've seen patients heal from acupuncture, whether it be emotional distress, physical ailments, depression, or more. I mean, I would turn it to you if there are any specific examples that you would want to give of how you've seen people heal.
I would say the stories I would share are patients who have experienced remarkable changes, who are more interested when they come in and I share with them what we just talked about, digestion, where they're like, I've had this since I was a kid. I always had like stomach problems. I had problems eating, but now it's getting to the point where I have a lot of IBS symptoms. I will explain to them that we somaticize, like, our emotions, right? We not only digest the food, we have to digest our life. So all of our thoughts and feelings are a process of digestion.
I love that analogy.
It's very accurate. And children especially, you see that in. But I would say most people will to see that, we're always trying to digest our thoughts and feelings. And when we can't, if somebody's always irritable, they'll generally have more acid reflux and TMJ. And if somebody just ruminates and it never is expressed, they usually have bloating and distended abdomen. And if somebody's that way, but they're fearful and worrying all the time, they usually have bowel issues. And then what we work on then is their awareness of that relationship, which they knew anyway, but a practitioner for the first time is telling them, yeah, there's a relationship between your emotional experience and your digestion. And then I tell them simple stuff. Don't watch TV while you're eating. And they're like, why? And it's fascinating, but that's just such a simple thing. That's like, people are like, oh my God, like I stopped like looking at my phone, or I stopped like watching television. And now when I eat much slower. I eat like, 40% less than I used to because I'm sitting there just eating. And then lastly, patients who are really aware of and experiencing deep states of stress in their lives where they're just going to need support to get through. Somebody who with a deep personal loss in their life, and just assisting the person to, for short periods of time, experience some peace, to experience an hour or two where they don't feel like just that it's hard to get through the next 10 minutes, and many patients over the years. And obviously you and I have that relationship as well, right?
Yes, we do. And I'm so grateful for you every day.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
What was the moment that you realized you wanted to learn more about traditional Asian medicine, and specifically acupuncture, if you can, that first intrigued you?
Sure. That I'll give you the abridged version of that. But so Yes, Colgate. I was fascinated in when I was at Colgate. I was interested in being neuroscience pre-med, which led me to actually studying philosophy and psychology, because at the time when I started to get into that, I felt personally, and this is, my own personal experience, that so much of what I perceived as medicine was missing the human part. So I seeked it out through philosophy, through psychology. And when I graduated, I was going to continue into a PhD program focusing on medicine and possibly continuing that. But after about a year or two, I said, it was a year and a half actually, and it was crazy. This professor who was going to be, my PhD mentor, I met with him and he looks at me and he goes, "What the hell are you doing here? You know all this stuff. Why don't you just go out and live?" And it was like he hit me on the head with a cane. I had taught sailing all through high school and college, so I wound up leaving the program, and I got my 100-ton merchant mariner's license from sailing on schooners and mostly sail training with young adults. And I did that, which led me to running, getting my captain's license, running charter boats. I injured my back and in my early 20s. And one of the sailors that I knew, he was a tanker captain for Exxon. He's like, "Hey, go see my wife. She does acupuncture." I had been told that I needed, surgery, and I'd probably never lift more than 5 pounds, and that they were needed to, fuse my discs. Long story short, I got acupuncture, and that was it. I was like, "There's no way. How could this affect a change in my body?" And not only that, but it changed me mentally and emotionally, because I was in my 20s and like somebody tells you that, and I literally was crippled. I could not walk. And I'm pretty crazy, as in like I broke my leg. When I broke my leg, which I broke my leg at Colgate, I walked into the hospital with a broken leg. I walked in. Okay. When I broke my finger, my toes, I tape it up, finish the day. So I broke my leg. I walked into the hospital. I'm like, "Hey, my leg's broken." The guy's like, "Sit there." I waited an hour and a half. The guy's like, "Your leg's broken." I said, "I told you my leg is broken." So I was so crippled from my back that I used to literally have to crawl, fall to the floor off my bed and crawl on my hands and knees to go to the bathroom. So the acupuncture, that was it. And then I pursued it. I wanted to learn it. So what did I do? Of course, I went to Shanghai to study, because that's what you do. I'm like, I'm going to learn this. So my back fully recuperated, never needed surgery. I started doing yoga. I started doing Qigong, and went to study in Shanghai in, I think it was 94. And that is my personal, that's just a little snippet of my personal experience with acupuncture.
Thanks for sharing that. That's an incredible story, and makes sense that you had your own personal journey to wanting to dive in the deep end with everything you practice today. So appreciate you sharing. I'm curious, and maybe you answered this question just now, but what was the biggest challenge you faced when deciding to go all in and start your own practice and do this kind of healing full time?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've changed a lot because I'm married and I have children. I am an all-in type person. So I didn't throw in all the parts about when I left that PhD program, I lived in my truck with my dog at the time. When I, injured my back, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to China. And my parents were like, "No, you're going to go to see a psychiatrist." They were not supportive. And I wound up visiting my girlfriend. We were out on the West Coast. I literally was walking around, going into these Chinese stores in Chinatown, like talking to these people like, hey, who does acupuncture? Who does Qigong? In the 90s. And they were like, oh, there's a Qigong master. She lives over here. I literally like got her address and drove to her house and knocked on the door. And she's like, you want to go to China? Done. I'm going to China in 2 months with you. Came back to New York, worked enough to have enough money. I bankroll myself on all of this. This is all like, I had no health insurance, nothing. Like, I lived in tents. I mean, if I told, this is the real deal. You want to talk about all in, like my whole life's been this way. So to me, I've just never imposed that on my family. My wife chose to when she was my girlfriend live that way, but I have never imposed any of this on anyone. But I'm a person that I pursued this for my own well-being, and I'm glad to have chosen this and to be able to help others. So, yeah, so those are not challenges. They're just kind of how I am.
I know you've been practicing for over 20 years and you've seen all sorts of things. You understand your patients on an incredibly deep level. I'm curious what sorts of ways you've seen women in particular reconnect with themselves as a result of your work. And I think specifically, how do you think busy moms and women most need to heal based on your experiences with patients?
That is the most important question for me to be clear about. Women are really the foundation and the creators of community. Women and children, I personally believe from my experience, are what creates community. Women have this natural, intuitive state within them. And there's this knowing. And children have it too. And so what I find often is that regardless of what women are coming in for, often, and you just said it, busy moms, often people in our society think of like, oh, wow, she is like, she's got such a nice house and they have lots of money and, she just gets all the help she wants or whatever. They make this assumption like, oh, life is so easy. But actually, it doesn't necessarily mean that life is easy. But what I want to point out is that when women connect to that inner knowing within themselves, when they look for what they really truly value, and that's an individual experience, but there is a general seeking of community, of kinship, of supporting themselves if they're so inclined to have a family and they have the ability to do that, supporting their children in that way. So it's often for women trying to connect to that inner knowing, because so many women experience trying to be 2, 3, 4 different personalities at the same time, and all at the same time. I really do believe that many, many women now are struggling and suffering. This isn't just, this is statistics. I try and assist each patient, each mother, each sister, each daughter, grandmother, whatever, to assist them in connecting to that aspect of themselves. One of the most important things is to assist women to find their way to their own personal self-worth. Because when that happens, it's going to change them. It's going to change their family. It's going to change the community. And then they'll connect together.
You just dropped some major knowledge and I love it. I love how you summarized that at the end. It's so true. And I am so excited to continue this journey with you to explore that last piece even more. Before we go, though, I do want to ask you, what would you say to the listener who is now thinking about giving acupuncture a try? And if they're apprehensive about seeing a professional, are there ways they can try to drop into their body and interrupt that cycle at home?
Sure. So acupuncture depending on what your condition or issue or inclination is, and hopefully if you've listened to this, you want to first have somebody who's nationally board certified, because that is the yardstick, really. And then just like anything, just like going to a physician or to, having a coach, you want to make a connection. And if you don't like the person and they're not listening to you, you need to find somebody else. So in a sense, I believe I'm a strong, believer in interviewing the people you want to work with. And then if you try a couple treatments, you need to get clinical results. Now, in some cases, you might not experience that right away, depending on the condition. Okay. But, you should feel something, and you should hopefully be guided in a way to self-care. And lastly, there are many different ways that you can self-care. And if you're motivated, you have incredible resources online to try and find things for acupressure, for changing eating habits. There's visualization, there's meditation, there's Qigong, and it's all out there, and it's all free, but it does require your attention, your intention, and your commitment.
Very helpful. And we can put some of those resources in the show notes for folks to check out after. Well, this was great, Jacques. Thank you so much again for being here. It was a great time, as we always do have. And if you guys liked what you heard today, please share it with friends and subscribe. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, Jacques included, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this. Thanks for listening.